Hey everybody, we are now live on YouTube with Harry. Oh man, I'm already messing up. We're live with Cary-Hiroyuki Tagawa. Oh man, this is off to a bad start, but we can't restart now because we're live. We are doing a Reddit AMA interview. And Cary, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're up to these days?
Yeah, aloha. That wasn't a bad start. It was a little bumpy. It's like taking a flight to Russia, you know. So,
Oh, uh-oh.
thanks. First of all, thanks for joining us and being part of our experiment here. Very excited to have you on board, and welcome all you fans and curious people. Cary-Hiroyuki Tagawa. I'm a little nervous. If I mess up, please forgive me. But very excited. It's the first opportunity to be with you in a real way. It's very rare. That's why I'm here in Providence, Rhode Island at the Comic-Con. I enjoy going to Comic-Cons in order to meet people and have them experience me in a real way. So many of the characters that I play are highly fantastical and highly unreal for the real person I am. So this is really a great opportunity for me. We're making history by being the first video feed. Very excited about that.
Let's talk a little bit about more recently you've been up to a number of things. What we're here today focusing on primarily is the launch of Tagawa Comics. Do you want to just give that a little intro and explain to people what we're trying to do here?
Absolutely. Happy Halloween, everybody, for all you Halloween freaks. A good Souls Day for Shang Tsung to be addressing souls. Um, yeah, it's Tagawa Comics is a brainstorm, uh, well, a product of a brainstorming session that my friend and partner John Gervais and I came up with. It's part of a fantasy idea that I've had for a long time about doing a comic book and doing a series of comic books, so we decided on a company, thus Tagawa Comics. This first set of comics that we're working on, again, he and I are both very out of the box. I want him to jump in here in a minute and say a few words. We highly about making history, such as this broadcast, the way that we'll present our first three comic books. There'll be three comics, three characters. The three characters are connected by a corrupt shogun that they serve. So Japan, samurai, time. The story will be told through a ninja, a samurai serves the shogun, and a monk who, what did I say? Also serves the shogun.
Carrie,
Yeah,
you're cutting out a little bit. Are you sure you don't have your hand on the mic?
I don't.
Oh, you're
How's
better now. You're better now. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just couldn't
No,
hear you. So.
not at all. I tend to speak softly, so feel free to jump in anytime. So the stories involve the three characters of the ninja samurai and a monk, and when they discover that the shogun has betrayed the code that they've believed in so long of honor and respect, they're really thrown into conflict because their lives have been about serving this one man. So, of what ninja principles are about, what samurai principles are about, and what a monk's life is about. And we feel it really runs parallel to a lot of what we're going through these days in the world. A lot of disillusionment, a lot of fear, a lot of confusion. This is all based around a system called Shushindo, which I've been developing as my really a system of respect and honoring my study in the martial arts. Also for my father, um, who I believe is the true inspiration, the energy when he passed, um, that began Chushindo. So that's the beginning of Tagawa Comics, and I want John to jump in here for a minute. John?
For those of you unfamiliar, John Gervais is the author and co-founder of Tagawa Comics. He is here. He might be out of frame right now. I can't currently see him. But they are appearing at Rhode Island Comic Con. They're in Providence, Rhode Island right now, preparing to do a number of appearances over the course of the weekend. And so, John, are you there?
I'm here, and I'm in true comic book form here in the shadows.
All right, John, why don't you explain a little bit from your point of view, kind of what's going on with Tagawa Comics?
Okay, well, Cary does it so gracefully. I'll try to do my best here, but basically, Cary always skips around one of the main passions of it for me, and that's the title comic book on Cary, the Cary Tagawa comic book. You know, that's one of my, great passions with this project is being able to tell his story. You know, the monk, the samurai, the ninja, those are 3 stories he wants to tell, but I think the people really also want to know his story. And we're going to try to tell his story in a comic book form, but at the same time, let him reveal a lot about himself through the comics.
Mm-hmm.
The great thing about meeting John is so true in my life and in certain moments. My life is very God-directed, heaven-directed, not especially in a religious sense, but in a very highly, truly spiritual sense. And it was one of those moments that we met in Pensacola at Pensacola Comic-Con. And we began talking, and pretty soon he was there for most of the day after we met. He would go away and come back, and we'd keep talking. And eventually got together a couple weeks later, and it was on. It's very rare that I do meet people that I connect with so strongly. I connect with practically everybody that I meet, and there are people that I meet that have very powerful, intense energy that matches mine. Mine certainly is intense, and as is seen in my work, and John is very much directed in the same way. So we've found that this relationship works well, and in the creative process, and friendship is one of the best I've ever had in my my life and career. So I want to thank John, and I want to thank the Divine for bringing us together. So we're here to announce with Tagawa Comics also a Kickstarter program. And Kickstarter is basically the first of many Kickstarter programs that I want to be involved in. This one initially is asking for a smaller fee just to find out who's out there and
To kind of gauge interest in the product and the community around it.
exactly. And in asking for contributions for this company, one thing that I do want everyone to understand how much we are people. Business is business. Business is about money. The money in the paper is worthless anyway. The most important thing when we pass will be the memories of the relationships that we have. In Japanese culture, based on Chinese philosophy, is all about people. That we are of the mindset of the Japanese Chinese letter that stands for person or human being, and he'll use his finger to draw an invisible lines, one line and a line that supports that. Those two lines symbolize the fact that we don't ever really do anything by ourselves. There's always a relationship. There's, whether it's, goes back to our parents, but that life begins in relationship. The more that we engage in that and help each other, support each other, better things, more powerful things can be done. So that brought John and us together. It brings you together with us, brings me together with you personally too. It's something that is critical in my life to really honor relationships. And I have to say, and it's great to be able to do this live, to be able to do it for the first time, be part of history. A lot of what Chushin Do is about in the human relationships, it's not so much about religious perfection of the human being. It's about the experience as growth. So to me, if someone has failed, if someone has fallen, has done things that have not been honorable, been in trouble, not that I did any stealing of cars or anything like that, but there are moments in my life where I have made mistakes and slipped, but I've learned from them, I've grown from them, and I always come from compassion for anybody who's had any experience. So just want to start this whole, what I'd like to think of and what John and I would like to think of as a movement, as a culture, a subculture, a nation. We're building a nation of people that have very similar sort of values and principles, and not based on any religious or political bent. We're about people, and in that, first of all, is helping each other, having compassion for each other. We have parts of Tagawa comics that will be for the soldiers and for children in a free mode, and we're very much about honoring those two groups, especially also for bullying and battering and for all the errant sort of male energy that's out there. We're very much about being in support of victims and support of victims becoming empowered to become truly powerful people. So that's how the story begins for Tagawa Comics.
That's awesome. I didn't want to interrupt you at all because everything you say is so captivating. I love the story, and I love being here conducting the interview and being part of the story. But because you were mentioning so much about the community around Tagawa Comics, I felt it's a good time to get started with some user questions from Reddit, if that's okay with you guys.
You read my mind.
John, are you there?
I'm here.
All right, so this is John Darius and Cary-Hiroyuki. I can't speak. Hiroyuki Tagawa answering your questions live on Reddit. There's still time to go ask questions. If you go on over to the Reddit page at reddit.com/r/IMA, we'll be on there, and we'll be starting from the top and working our way down. Are you guys ready?
We're ready.
Okay, pulling up the thread now. Our first question is from Judasco. I apologize in advance if I get any of these usernames wrong, but Judasco, I'll do my best. Judasco says, I read you started off as a healer before coming to Hollywood. Could you tell more? Who taught you, and who was your master?
My master is God. This isn't a system that had been developed before, not that I'm aware of. I have a sense, though, through information that I've gathered, that there was, before acupuncture needles were metal, so this had to be a very long time ago, as great Chinese modes are about. This system is called Chu Shin Do, and yes, I started doing Chu Shin Do 8 years 8 years, he said. 6 years, 8 years, before I went to Hollywood. It's an odd story. Um, First of all, the system started out when my father passed from stomach cancer, and I hate to say that it began in anger about the medical care in this country. It was when chemotherapy was starting, and not to say anything bad about chemotherapy. I know a lot of people have been helped quite a bit by chemotherapy, but in the beginning, for it being new, the concept, especially looking at it from an Eastern perspective, is that you needed to kill cells in order for other cells to live. And just that one fact emotionally really stirred up my young man anger. Um, and I was determined that my life would become devoted to finding an alternative to killing cells for life. And it made as much sense as going to war for peace. So I began a journey into a lot of different directions. One was actually more mystical and had to do with studying mystery schools, astrology, the universe, and what that has to do with healing. Most people might not understand, but my mind has always been that way. In the pursuit of an answer, have always looked for a lot of different directions in order to perhaps run across one piece of information that would help in the pursuit of what I was looking to develop. One thing about my energy, and I have to say, and not to offend anybody that doesn't believe it, believe in energy such as astrology or the Chinese animals, not to offend anybody, but certainly a lot of my energy has to do with tigers. I am a white metal tiger born in 1950. And the basic personality of tigers is absolutely about fearlessness, of not allowing fear or not even considering fear a factor, at the odds of whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. I'm going to sidetrack for a second, and I'll be right back to the healing. But my life has been about being in low percentage situations, maybe being the only Japanese family in North Carolina in 1955. My father from Hawaii was a lifer in the U.S. Army. I was raised an Army brat. And to be in the South in 1955, 10 years after the war, the percentages were not really good for a lot of warm welcomes. And not to put the South down, the South has a right to their ways and traditions, as does everybody in the world. And every religious group, every political group has a right, from a human standpoint, to be who they are. So certainly my life started out in some adversity, also in a great observant way of people and their energy. That really, when people say, how long have you been studying martial arts, my sense of it was, or whatever martial arts energy is about, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but I believe that my skills at 6 years old were being honed quite well. And number one is observation, the ability to observe people, things, places, and be able to pick up the invisible energy, the chi, the key of that particular environment. And so as I did that, I began a process at 6 to develop a strategy, and that, again, part of what martial arts has taught me about. But I had inherent DNA start at 6. So back to the healing. The healing began in a bit of anger, but the tools that I gained at 6 years old, decisions that I made, were all about this set of facts. If somebody tells me there's a 1 in a million chance, I smile and I raise my hand and I say, I'll take it. And if somebody says there's none in a million chances, that can't ever be true. So I say, I'll make the one chance, and then I'll take that one. So I'm basically unstoppable unless you put a bullet in my head. Not that I'm inviting that, but and cancel that thought. But it's been sort of the credo of my life, and it's led me to the healing. It's led me to Hollywood. By the time I got to Hollywood, because at 36, my life based on this principle. It sounds kind of arrogant to say from a Western standpoint, from an Eastern standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. That it wasn't anything but a thing. It was another experience in the Tagawa legacy. I'd had glimpses growing up. My mother was an actress in Japan, a very rebellious woman running away from an aristocratic family to join the theater. It's like run away to join the circus. She was one of those adventurous souls, and I got that from her. So it's been part of a family legacy in entertainment. So I'd always thought about it and always kept it a great secret in my life about my desire to become an actor. Long story long, back to the healing.
Again, I didn't mean to cut you off because everything you say is incredible.
The healing, after taking information from, at that time, sports science, the principles of martial arts, looking at some very interesting facts, that it seemed like science, medicine got to a certain point in discovering the facts about that the average person only uses 10 to 15% of their lung capacity, knowing that every cell needs oxygen. There was a lot of bits of information that kind of got to a certain point and there was dead end. And I simply started connecting those dots through questions that I had. First of all was why are we at a dead end here? Why isn't somebody going on with research about all this? So the questions made me keep searching. I came across a breathing system in a Pilates studio. And as we know, Pilates to be a very popular system today. It almost feels like Pilates didn't arise until maybe 5 years ago. It was actually a system from the 20s by a German gymnast in New York City who worked with dancers. So the system was really about creating flexibility, powerful flexibility for dancers. But the breathing system that they used was my first exposure to a formal breathing system. We did breathing in martial arts, but it wasn't the main focus, whereas in Pilates it was. I brought that to the forefront, knowing that it in fact would lead to a lot of things. And so that's where the breathing came from. The principles of martial arts dances, I started in Japan Karate Association, actually doing kendo, the fencing with bamboo swords when I was 13 and got to karate when I was 20. And in that, I learned a lot from martial arts, the group that I was involved in, about the physical. It's my contention that martial arts probably has the greatest knowledge of the physical beyond Western medical perspectives of the body. Martial arts has proven to me, certainly, that in that knowledge that I perceived and then experimented with, worked on people, was teaching them the system of Chushindo using the staff, and all those things together have led to 38 years now of pursuing this experimentation, and would like to speak to more of that a little bit later.
That's an incredible story. Again, I didn't want to stop you because it was so good, but we have plenty of questions to get to. If it's okay with you, if we can move on.
Yeah, that's fine.
This question is from Roan Tam. Do you ever wish you didn't have to play the villain?
And absolutely not. I can't say that I haven't been longing to play good guys. But I am, the one thing that I had no illusions about Hollywood. First of all, I was 36. So it wasn't like going in at 21 and like, I'm going to be a star and I'm going to get my name on Hollywood Boulevard. My intention was to use any notoriety that I could get to get back to my healing. And that is this moment. And this moment being with this Reddit interview with our Kickstarter program. My direction is toward my spiritual journey. And thankfully, God, for whatever we call him, and any religious name that we may have for God, one actual spiritual concept that I have is called Tengri. It's we are all one under the blue sky. This is from Genghis Khan, that over ADD guy from Mongolia. But that we all share a common experience under the sky of life. Life is unbelievable, people. Really what we could, should, and will do because of Tagawa Nation and Chushindo is really treat each other better. So much better. So it's very odd. Back to the question again. I'll keep doing this quite a bit, but bad guys, it was clear to me that, I don't know, did I have a choice? Could I play Asian good? There were no Asian good guys. Running around with cameras around their neck, just like geeking it out. Not that geeks are, but certainly there was not a perception of, especially Japanese men, that I could aspire to. And certainly at that time in Hollywood, it was the Asian bad guy wheel. And I thought, that's fine. Give me the opportunity. It's like the 1 in a million chance. How many chances do you get to be a part of Hollywood? Whether you want to play a good guy or it's not, they don't ask you. They say, here's what's available. Can you do this? And so the thing that has driven my Asian bad guys all this time has been the anger that there hasn't been Asian good guy roles. and my negative experiences growing up in the South. So the energy that goes into my characters, for what actors would aspire to put 100% into their characters, I always put in 1,000. Always cover my back, knowing that this thing, before it was videos and DVD, this stuff is permanent. You could put that in a time capsule, bury it, and it would be real to the people opening it up. So you better make sure that that shot that you get is full of everything that you got. And so, no, I don't regret playing so many bad guys. I'm happy to announce something here in a minute. But I think I've kind of done it all for the bad guys, from characters like Showdown in Little Tokyo, playing actually that movie had the most extensive tattoos, full body tattoos. The man, up to that point, there was a movie called The Illustrated Man with Rod Steiger, who had the most extensive tattoos. Showdown in Little Tokyo took the #1 position for that. It was the same guys who did the tattoos. From Showdown in Little Tokyo to American Me, playing the only Japanese as a member of the La M, the Mexican Mafia. It was a true story, only the character was not really from East LA. He was from Hawaii. Had murdered someone, and not having a federal penitentiary in Hawaii, they sent him to Folsom Prison in California. To Shang Tsung, probably my most notable character from my fans, playing an evil sorcerer.
That actually leads in really well to this next question. It's from Bolikost 3000. He asks, well, first of all, he says, "Hello, you are a big part of my moving watching life. You're the baddest dude in every film, and I appreciate you for it." And his question is, who would win in a fight, El Japo from American Me or Shang Tsung?
There's no doubt. when you can take souls, it's a little different. I would say, though, that El Japo, that was quite an experience to film in Folsom Prison. It is the oldest prison in the United States, over at that time 125 years old, that the inmates built from granite. I mean, they were busting rocks to build that place. And the energy going in was highly spooky. And we knew we were in deep danger when they made us sign waivers to say that if we were ever taken hostage, they wouldn't negotiate. So we knew what we were doing. And it rang true, throughout the filming, that every day going in, didn't know if we were coming out. So the intensity of that character, and as actors, we, in being hypersensitive people, pick up energy right away and then put it back out on the screen. Luckily, I have a few really solid basic tools as not to be consumed by it. But in that, El Japo was probably the most intense character that I've ever been asked to play, to be in an environment where that kind of character does dwell. And Shang Tsung was a lot of fun. It was difficult. That movie, the odds of it becoming what it did were low. And New Line Cinema, which had just been bought by Turner Communications, was betting on Don Juan DeMarco with Marlon Brando and Johnny Depp to be more successful. So we were kind of given the short end, the producers, without being liable or lawsuit oriented. I'll just say that the producers were slightly questionable. So we were running at times on a budget that didn't quite seem to be enough, but we did the best we could. We shot in warehouses. The scene where I'm giving the speech, like, "Welcome to Mortal Kombat, the greatest," a motorcycle would drive by, and in the out,
Stop what you were doing and then
yeah,
redo the whole thing.
we'd see it in the outtake. I'm going, what the is going on? And then we shot in airports, so we had to do dialogue between planes taking off and landing, Santa Monica Airport. And then we shot at Van Nuys Airport. And it was a real challenge, and luckily we were able to produce, as a group, something that people really responded to all over the world. I mean, I was at a funeral for, actually it was Robin Shu, Liu Kang's mother, in Thailand when we were shooting. Wasn't able to get all the way back, so we all went to a Buddhist ceremony for his mother. And during the ceremony, this monk leans over and he goes, "I've seen you in movies before." It's like, that's the power of Hollywood. It can
That's
show.
incredible. But definitely the power to take souls is the overpowering ability in this fight.
Yes, and my line. Shall I give you the line? Who is this again? His name?
His name is Bolikost 3000.
It is for Bolokos 3000. Everybody who's a fan of Mortal Kombat. Okay, ready?
Do it.
Here we go. Your soul is mine.
Oh man. There was another one later down here that asked for a shout out of that as well. We'll get to that in a bit. Are you ready to move on to the next question?
Yeah.
Warrior Witch 0111 says, "What was your father's rank in the army, and did you ever want to follow in his footsteps?"
Warrior Witch, hello, my dear. I
There's a
remember.
lot of creative names on Reddit, trust me.
Well, it's just that I remember her from Twitter. So I appreciate you jumping in. My father was a master sergeant, a very frustrated master sergeant because his wife, my mother, being the hard-driving, ambitious woman that she was, always wanted him to become an officer, and he tried his damnedest um, to do that. Didn't get there. And at the same time, this is my father's love for my mother. He hated officers. The officers one that gave him so much junk in the South. I had it bad, but I had a plan and a strategy. I don't think he had much opportunity to implement much of anything, considering officers, people above you. And over 50% of the military was from the South. And I honor that for the life that I've had growing up in the military. I have a love for the military. Um, you know, their actions, they're only responsible to do what they're told. It's the ones that tell them what to do that have other agendas. But so far as the grunt, the boots that are on the ground, I honor them. That's part of what we're doing in giving these comic books to soldiers. So I have to say, and again, nothing I have to say against the South. Thank you for the opportunity to have created situations where I had to grow, come up with a strategy that has saved me my whole life. So I only say this in terms of certain fond memories that I have and some that aren't so fond. But at that time, over 50% of the U.S. military is from the South. So it was a very interesting thing. So he definitely tried to become an officer. Didn't he went to the Army Language School in Monterey, California, studied Russian. Didn't quite do that. He just tried everything he could. He loved my mom so much. There's one story that I'll take time to tell. When he was courting her, and she was a star in this Japanese theater called Takarazuka. Now, I don't know how many of you know, but Japan has a very long tradition of a theater called kabuki, where the men play the female roles also. Well, Takarazuka was the opposite equivalent, where women played male roles, and my mother was a male lead. And it was more a musical theater. So for a U.S. Army soldier to be courting a Japanese theater star was just outrageous. Where he got the guts to do that. He was a tiger, so I'm sure it came from that. But one day he brought ice cream to her. And in Japan, it was hard for the Japanese to get ice cream, but soldiers were, because of the privileges that they had, were able to get it. So he knew it was a big deal. And he brought her this box that had like 6 ice cream cones. And she went to grab for one of them, thinking he just bought all of these choices. And he said, "No, they're all for you." It just... There's a whole nother part to this story. And maybe it's... this broadcast isn't long enough for all of that. But a part of my actual heart, although I wasn't born in Hawaii, very much is about local culture, local boys. And the local culture in Hawaii is a mixed Polynesian and Asian blend. Very powerful warriors the Hawaiians were. And at the same time, highly sensitive, highly emotional, very passionate about things. And that example was very much about his love for her and getting swept away, and how much he tried to be an officer. So
It
about.
definitely is an incredible story, and you pull a lot of information or inspiration from that, and you can tell. And thank you for sharing that story. And of course, there's plenty of time for you to take to as long as you want to take stories like that. You're welcome to.
Well, I do want to thank Warrior Witch 1111, was it? 1111?
I think it was 0111.
Okay, 0111. Thank you for that question, and please continue to tweet. Let's stay connected.
Do you want to just do a real quick shout out? What is your Twitter these days?
My Twitter has so many, and we just created a new one. Do we want to do that one? And
I think we made one for Tagawa Comics. I'm not sure. I don't know if John's.
Yes, yeah, we have a Tagawa Comics Twitter, which you just do Twitter, Tagawa Comics Inc.
Okay, so for those of us joining us on the live interview that are Twitter savvy, or in the Twitter sphere as they call it, please go follow Tagawa Comics Inc. I also found, I knew it was somewhere, it was buried in the comments. Elmanders32 says, I have a friend who is a huge Mortal Kombat fan named Justin. If you're doing a YouTube video, could you do me a huge favor by looking directly into the camera and delivering, Justin, your soul is mine? That would be so cool.
it would be so cool. Do you know how many times I've been asked in my life? You know what was really weird? I used to, and not that I won't, but just kind of aside.
He asked first, so I figured we'd give him at least this one.
And it's a great question and a request. And if I do it for Justin, and I feel bad if I don't do it for everybody. And I used to do that all the time. And anybody that would stop me on the street, I have that kind of love for people. And so I'll try it and hope that it doesn't create a landslide. But this is kind of a maybe promise. So. Depending on the moment, for sure. But thanks for that request. Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
And what's the next question?
Oh, sorry, I just went to go find Justin's because he was the first to ask. I figured we'd give him at least that. But the next question is, as a martial artist, what are your feelings about the over-the-top action in action movies? Things that wouldn't work in actual situations. Would you prefer if movies showed more realistic combat or flashier the better? This is from Bob the Bob.
I think it's two directions that are unstoppable, and my opinion is that there's a need for both, and there's a place to really look soberly and objectively at what the effects are. I think because we have had those over-the-top situations, and especially in the 80s when there wasn't any massive wars going on, and with canon films and Michael Dudikoff, American Ninja, a lot of hypey, kind of over-the-top kind of situations, as was Kung Fu theater. But at least in Kung Fu theater, you had real martial artists, and you could tell they were actually hitting each other and even in a dustless room, when they would kick each other, you see that little puff of dust, and I was addicted to Kung Fu theater. One thing that I was clear, though, as it became more popular, and really bullying today has a lot to do with having grown up on a steady diet of those kinds of films. So I have to say that because we have not monitored it and really understand what the effects are, it's gone rampant and it keeps getting worse. It's led to MMA. The brutality of MMA is something I'm absolutely against. In fact, I want to present a new martial art, which is an ancient 7,000-year-old martial art. But brutality and bullying are results of too much hyped up, unreal action. And when you think about those movies, the movies that I'm responsible for playing bad guys, but at least the bad guys for what they do are rewarded in the end with death. So it's not like there's a glorification, but there is a glorification of the good guys doing the killing. So the bad guy kills one person, happens to be the cousin of the mother or some relative of the good guy, and then the good guy spends the rest of the movie killing like 60, 70, 80 guys. So, who and what and murder and for what purpose? We know the good guy is a cop a lot of times, and he's always the renegade guy who works without a partner. You go into his apartment, it's a mess. You open his refrigerator, and it's empty pizza boxes and beer. I mean, how many times can we watch that kind of format? And then he gets a partner. And then they go through some bantering kind of stuff all the way to, excuse me, fans, Jump Street. But it becomes where it's comedy when it started out in some action, killing, murdering thing. I think we kind of run the gamut of action movies. Not that I think it's going to stop, or I would hesitate participating as much as I did in the beginning. As far as the other part, the realistic parts, movies like the last one that I saw was Grandmaster with Tony Leung and Zhang Zi. What an amazing woman. I worked with her in Memoirs of a Geisha. In Memoirs of a Geisha, I was in the same scenes with Zhang Zi and Michelle Yeoh from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And I'm looking at them and thinking, this is the first time I've ever been in a scene with two women that could kick my ass. And that's comes from more of a real tradition, although it was highly fantasy too, with wires and things like that. But I'm more willing to accept wires and not so much the hyped up action stuff. I think the Japanese samurai movies lent to the most realistic in terms of where violence and ending someone's life is about. I mean, the blood, and for all that people go, blood. And when you shoot somebody, they bleed. They actually die. Their face goes white. There's no more life there. And I think because of action movies, we made shooting people kind of a impersonal kind of thing. I think we need to wake up from that. And I think Chinese need to keep making their movies.
Here's a short and simple question for you. Sunshine Queen asks, when was the last time you went to Japan, and do you have a favorite place there?
Japan. That's not a short answer, bro.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were just going to say,
like
a month ago, and I was at this place.
I can start with that. I was in Tokyo in February, and I was shooting a Russian movie of all things. And this is how ridiculous my life is in contradiction. Shooting a Russian movie in Tokyo. And then we went on to Moscow to finish the film. Being born in Tokyo and always having been raised to be proud to be Japanese, there are plenty of things that Japanese have done that aren't to be proud of, or we as Japanese should not be proud of. War is one of them. But I'm highly proud to be Japanese. And the situation with Fukushima, the radiation, and I'll just say this for the record, I don't believe that it was as naturally nature. There was something else going on, and I don't want to talk about anything about that. But my feeling for Japan is so much of my life purpose to have changed the images in Hollywood of Asian men. And I think, good, better, and different, certainly I've given you all a different look than the stereotypic BS kind of characters that I watched growing up. It used to piss me off to no end. And that's what really has gone into the intensity of my characters. If anything, you're going to remember that I was in the movie through the intensity of the characters. So Japan now, that's when I was there. I'm feeling very, very heavy in my heart about the situation, radiation, and how much people are in denial of it, and they just go on. It's such the Japanese way to just, no matter what, to go on. And I'm just so proud to be Japanese. Thanks for the.
That's an awesome heritage and awesome that you're kind of combating. There is definitely a Japanese stereotype in Hollywood, and it's awesome that you're doing what you can to break the mold of that. Moving on, though, I Do the Lord's Kiss has the $1,000,000 question that everybody is wondering. Do you think a Mortal Kombat remake will ever happen?
You know, there's been such an effort, and just referring back to the non-liable comment that I'm about to make, it was being blocked by the producers of the first and second from anybody else doing it, and it held up the process so long, and for ridiculous reasons. I really feel the second movie was a little bit more than a joke compared to the first, and it had to do with the budget, with some overblown egos, with although I like certain fight scenes from the second, I just felt like it created a karma with the people who were in charge that it didn't happen then. Then finally the rights came back. They went to court over it, and they got the rights to do it, and then it fell into a time zone where superhero movies were not always working. And thank God, finally in the last 2 years maybe, Hollywood has gotten it more right by better action and more characterization. Some of the first superhero movies that came out were just so empty, and it's typical. And this is what's so great about giving interviews. I can say exactly what I have to say. Hollywood is so out of touch with real people. Hollywood is such a Disneyland where you go into fantasy about who you are as an executive, who you are as a creative person, who you are this and that it's such an insulated, bad karma world for those people who get caught in traps that, okay, so they're human, have compassion for them, all of that. But the responsibility of Hollywood, with the power of Hollywood, for the ability for Hollywood to do movies that shape people's lives and opinions, and it's just ridiculous how much responsibility I think that they don't get, that they don't deliver on. I don't know. I'm happy to be at a position where I'm going to start to make some choices to produce my own things. The internet is mind-boggling. I'm so happy to be part of this world and joining through YouTube and new technology coming up, just to create an independence where I can really be who I am and present and create a union of those kind of like-minded people. What was the question?
It was, do you think a Mortal Kombat remake would ever happen? And you definitely answered that.
Let me finish this one part. That the people at Warner Brothers, a guy named Lance Sloan, and then the guy who brought into focus the webisodes, Kevin T, have worked so hard to keep it up. But because the failure in that time zone of the superhero movies, the size of the budget was not going to allow Kevin to do what he wanted, and it's sitting in limbo right now. It may come back, and certainly there's every reason for it to come back. The Mortal Kombat video games now is gone, totally international, and there's a market out there. But let me just say to Warner Brothers, if you're gonna do it right, and don't cheese it out. You're dealing with fans. You're dealing with people who live by Mortal Kombat, and you cannot treat video game players that way.
Is it safe to say that if a Mortal Kombat remake or reboot or sequel would ever happen, that you would you would be open to revisit your role as Shang Tsung.
Yeah, there was a time where I would say absolutely not, especially given the past producers. But this new group is totally honorable and wonderful, creative guys. I would love to be part of it. You know, when back in the days when I hated the producers from before, that's not liable, is it? I just thought, you know what? Shang Tsung died in that movie. He's a classic, and why mess with him? But I would really consider the material for a third one with this new group.
Here's an interesting question. This one comes from Judo Monkey Kyle. Can you tell us an interesting story from working with the late Brandon Lee on the set of Showdown in Little Tokyo?
So hypersensitive, guys. You can make me cry. I don't think you could imagine any of my characters crying, but I am such a sucker for truth, number
There's
one.
no easy questions on the internet. They keep them coming.
And that's good. I appreciate that. Yes, I can share a story. Um, I was so Bruce Lee is one of my heroes. In fact, this probably be the only combination of heroes that you've heard in this combination, in this combining. Bruce Lee, Jimi Hendrix, and the Dalai Lama. So, um, I had met different people who've had contact with Bruce from the time he was teaching. James Coburn, um, Sterling Siliphant, who was writing, a major writer at the time, who was a student of Bruce. Um, his wife, who was an actress, had been given memorabilia that had to do with Bruce. So Bruce was a big part of my life. So when I heard they had the opportunity to work with Brandon, it just was overwhelming. He was such a real guy and very sensitive, creative human being. And you could see how much it hurt him, to say the least, about what happened to his dad and what the legacy of that meant. But he was determined to create his own career and create. I mean, The Crow was probably something Bruce Lee might not have done. So he was headed in a highly creative road. It was just mind-boggling. And we talked a lot, and it was an honor to work with him and be part of what he was. He made the film work with Dolph. Dolph, I love Dolph. You know, he has a chemical engineering degree. He's a smart guy. This is not um, some of the characters that he plays. Also, yeah, he's a truly good person. But Brandon certainly pumped up the good guy side in that film. Really brought a light to that film. He did it great justice. The story that I want to share about Brandon was the last time that I saw him. It was a rainy night in Santa Monica at a pool hall. He said, "Yeah, come on down. I'll be playing pool here." So I sat and I watched him play pool, and we knew that he had gotten the Crow, and very excited for him. And as I said goodbye, I just felt like something didn't feel right. In Japanese culture, you only say goodbye once. It's a very formal thing. So when you greet, it's a very formal greeting, and when you leave, you only if you left something in there, you send somebody go back in and get it. But you do not show up where your spirit has said goodbye to someone else's spirit. And so as I felt kind of weird, I left, and I didn't notice where Brandon was. When I got outside and was looking for my ride, I heard Cary, and I couldn't tell where it was. He was behind me in the shadows, and he said, "Good luck." And something just felt really odd. that he was there in the shadows and his voice, and it was when I heard that he had died in the circumstances, I just totally lost it. I was shooting a film in Thailand. So that's my Brandon story.
Wow. Dansden asked, and this is a film we haven't received many questions about, any stories you want to share from Planet of the Apes?
Oh. Are you a Tim Burton fan? Can we ask him? Can he give us?
Yeah, let me actually reply to him and see if he gets back to us. Cary would like to know if you're... I'll let you know if he gets back to us.
Not a problem. So, well, I'll give you both answers. So, one would be if you're a Tim Burton fan. I have to say brutally honestly, which I'm always about, and I always compromise myself in order to not offend people. It's very Japanese. But I have a rebellious American side that absolutely gets pissed off at people lying all the time and cheating. And I've done both, so I have to have some. But having said that, there were some things that happened again at the producer level, which didn't make sense for me. I didn't get paid overtime for makeup. They would work me to death. It took 5 hours of makeup. Didn't get paid for a certain thing, and it was just an awesome challenge going in. And I'm always up for challenges. So I was up for it, went through my stage of being a little pissed off, and then just got on to the work. So I would say it could have been a better film had Tim been given the money to do what he wanted to creatively. I didn't feel that it was a Tim Burton film, given the sort of odd, quirky style that he has. I was very anxious to work with him to see what he could do with Planet of the Apes. Planet of the Apes was a part of my growing up, especially the first movie. And I was excited to be able to play an ape. I was highly excited to play an ape. Um, yeah, and in the process, I was supposed to play Attar, Michael Clark Duncan, crazy, incredible, creative, loving, big guy. When I heard that he was coming on to the film, I thought, no, wait a minute, if I'm supposed to be playing the bad guy and he's bigger than me, and then all of a sudden I got it, I might not be in the movie anymore, at least not playing that character. And so Tim Burton actually created my character, Crow, to be with the good guys, and it was really cool. And then I kind of gave him a storyline, and we incorporated that into the film. And then so what happens? He dies in the end. There's this legacy of dying that I have, but
The one time you get a hold of a good guy role.
yeah, that I die in. So anyway, it was great for the moment. It was through some brutal kind of environments, though. Being in that makeup, and then being like when in the pond scene where they all go back and find his ship. They heated the pool because they were going to have to jump in. But for that, it was so humid in that place. And in that makeup, I was like sweating and crazy. Didn't have to use a lot of makeup remover that day. But, all my, and kind of as a side note, all my films hold such a personal connection to. And Planet of the Apes was during a very difficult time in my life. And it helped get through that period. It represented the kind of energy that I was in. I was a civilized savage, as Kroll, the character, was.
We
Thanks.
got a couple Tagawa Comics related questions. If is John still there? I can't see you, but hopefully you're still in the room.
Here.
L20 asks, how will Tagawa Comics be distributed?
Okay, we're going to, on our website, which people can get a membership to through Kickstarter, or later on they can actually purchase a monthly membership. We will distribute digital copies through the website that they can download, and we'll also have printed copies that we can ship direct. We're also looking and discussing distributing them through dojos around the country. And then we have quite a few comic book stores that we've been in communication with that are interested. So there'll be comic book stores, they'll be in dojos, they'll be pretty much anywhere you want us to find to sell them. If there's people there looking for them and there's a market for them, we'll find a way to get them to you.
Awesome. Also, on a similar note, I can't even. I See Living People asks, "Hello, Mr. Tagawa. Where do you believe the future of comics is headed, and will there be a new medium to accommodate such a change?"
Aloha. I'm excited about comic books in that I spent a certain period of my life, certainly. It'd be a surprise probably for people to hear. I was into Sergeant Rock and Army at War, and having grown up in the military, very military type comic books. I never really got into Superman or any of the Marvel characters, but I think it's the future of comic books is critical in that we're living such a harsh reality at this moment around the world in all levels, economically, politically, personal freedom-wise, that the need for comic books and the need to have a break from all of that, to indulge in fantasy, and certainly video games do that. Comic books also play that sort of role, and the forum is changing. It will be online. We want to do a comic book that also has actors reading parts that John keeps waving that no one should be hearing. It doesn't matter, ultimately. Right? And so somebody else can do it, and whoever does it that heard this and doesn't acknowledge it, let them, deal with the karma of it. But, oh, is this like a mute?
That's for him.
Huh? Oh, him. Oh, so he cut it out. You cut it
Yeah, sorry, my phone was ringing. I cut myself out. People can still hear you.
Oh, I see. Okay. So anyway, we're attempting a lot of different things, and it's cool. Yeah, so there's a great future in it. We want to keep innovating and trying different things. Thanks for the question.
That's awesome. Here's another one we haven't received any questions about. The Shiniest Hobo, which is a very creative name, by the way, asks, "What was it like on the set of Space Rangers? Do you think the show would have done better today than it had?"
And a testament to my feeling, it was ahead of its time. It lends more to comic booky kind of characters, and at that time, TV was still the major venue, and shows like Deep Space Nine were coming up at the same time. Star Trek, of course, was pumping. So Space Rangers was really a departure from all. I really liked the show and the characters. They were all very, very well developed in who they were. I loved Xylan. I loved playing Xylan. He was one of the good guys. Had that series gone on past 6 or 9 episodes, can't remember exactly. I think it was 9. I think it would have been perfect for now. It kind of and it's not what Guardians of the Galaxy were, but that's kind of the effect of Guardians of the Galaxy at this moment, with all these kind of, superheroes from before, to have a totally ragtag group. Very American in its tone, and rebellious, and it was really well written dialogue. Liken it to that moment that we're experiencing today.
Here's a great question from Killer BTX. My sons are currently studying karate and taekwondo as both a hobby and a sport and as self-defense. What advice do you have for young martial artists like them who want to go deeper in the mental, spiritual, and historical side?
Follow Chushindo. This is exactly geared in one sense to martial artists. Um, there's at least in my estimation, and not that I've gone to every dojo on the planet, but there seems to be a certain lack of just exactly that, the inner, the spiritual aspect of it. And it's hard to believe that that could happen because so much of martial arts from the inception and the energy that it came from um, is absolutely that. So sad to say, and as an American, I'm ashamed at what we do sometimes with pure systems like yoga. How diluted has yoga become? And I believe martial arts has certainly become diluted. And one of the main purposes of Chushindo is to serve those who wish to pursue that part of the martial arts. Spiritual, the inner, the discipline and values of a life that aren't normal. Normal meaning that most of normal, which is the average American doesn't live by. Certainly martial artists have the opportunity to pursue a different aspect of human experience. I would love to teach your sons and share with them the system. It's based on breathing, which is absolutely a main line to what the spirit is about. So that's what Chushindo will be beginning rather quickly. So please join us.
And they can contribute to the Tagawa Comics Kickstarter, which is all built in. Let's talk about that for a second. So the first issue of Tagawa Comics is actually about Chushinjo, correct?
There's going to be 3 separate comic books, one for each character, the ninja, the samurai, and the monk. And John was talking about Chushindo, about a Cary Tagawa comic book, and we're going back and forth about it being the first, but it is absolutely the key to this comic book and the genius that John is. I was all ready to present Chushindo on its own, and instead using this form, which is more pop culture, social media kind of concept, I thought it was more relevant as a venue. And with the content being pure and true, I felt that that would be okay. So we're in the midst of making those kind of decisions about Tagawa, my own comic book, and my story. My story is it's like a ride in Disneyland. So we will be doing that. It's just a question right now, which is first.
Here's a kind of a crazy one. You've worked with quite a few Expendables cast members. Is there any chance that you'll be in Expendables 4? And that's from Judo Monkey Kyle.
Absolutely not.
They won't receive your or email you back about it?
Nah, they're not interested in me. And I do applaud them on their success. I think they struck a nerve which people, recognize the time that they went through when there was a purity about heroes, and I'm happy to see that. I think in that group, though, they're just all good guys. And
Maybe that's why they need you. They need a big bad guy.
well, I'm not so anxious to pump my bad guy stuff. In the end, we know he's gonna die. I'm running out of ways to die, guys. No, if anything, I tell you what I would be interested in, a bad guy, to do a film as the lead, as a bad guy going through a transition to become a good guy. And not necessarily a good, I think that the term is kind of loose, good guy, bad guy. Good guys tend to me to be worse than the bad guys. And the bad guys tend to be more like men than the good guys. So, great generality and highly biased, and it just is based on the truth of my experience in Hollywood. A lot of the bad guys and the real bad guys, ones that can portray that kind of negative energy, are such nice, good guys. They're kind of like martial artists. You know, the higher you go in rank, and the ability to know, in the worst case scenario, to kill somebody, are the nicest guys. And they are pursuing internal goals, and they realize that the art is designed for that. It's not about the fighting. The fighting is just a tool to get deeper into the spirit. And although it was designed at first to, for the battlefield, there was only one purpose. It was to kill somebody and not be killed. It wasn't, you know, aerobics. Not, martial arts routines as it's become a sport. Okay, so I honor that people are looking for creative expressions of the martial arts, but if my teachers live long enough to see martial arts being done with music, they would roll over in their grave.